Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where we dive deep into impactful and inspiring conversations with amazing professionals who've turned their challenges into stepping stones for success. I'm Johanna, your host, and each time we meet, we'll explore the stories and journeys of remarkable individuals who are PAs, doctors, professionals, mothers, and mission-driven changemakers, from the halls of the hospitals to the hearts of our homes, and into the communities we serve. Join us as we uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between, and see life through each other's perspective. If you're seeking fulfillment in your career and life, I've got something special for you too. Download our free guide on how to be a fulfilled provider. It's packed with tips and insights to help you thrive while balancing the many hats you wear. And for all those parents out there dreaming big while raising little ones, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams children's book series, available now on Amazon. These heartwarming stories inspire kids to chase their own dreams, just like you're chasing yours. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Hello, friends. I am honored to have today Leah Henck here with us on the podcast. Leah is the president of Freedom Firm. Before we dive in, though, I do want to give a quick content warning. In this episode, we do discuss human trafficking, which may be sensitive or triggering for some listeners. We believe this is a very important conversation because slavery of all forms should not exist. But we also want to be mindful of our listeners' well-being, or if you have little ones in the room. If you or someone know that has struggled with this, we've included resources in the show notes that may be helpful. So Leah has completed her MBA from Regent University. She did that in 2008, joined her husband in India in January of 2009. Together, they spent the next 7 years serving with the Freedom Firm team in Pune, India. During this time, Leah and Mala worked together to found Rumhama Designs, a business dedicated to providing rescued women a healthy, sustainable livelihood. Upon returning to the U.S., Leah turned her focus to running after 3 active, beautiful children. And through unexpected events, Leah rejoined the work of Freedom Firm USA, first as a treasurer and now as president. Today, she finds incredible joy in the privilege to stand as one of a team, reaching out hands of hope and healing to girls who are forgotten and abused. Thank you so much, Leah, for joining me today. And I am really glad that you have taken the time to share your experience working in this very difficult field, to be honest.
Thank you for having me, Johanna. It's very good to reconnect with you also.
Yes, I know. A little side note is that we had met when we were teenagers. We both came from mission-minded families and had met through that network back in Louisiana many, many, many years ago.
Yeah, we won't count how many.
Exactly. But it's a blessing to be able to have that connection and, have this like-minded friendships from long ago.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Leah, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your personal background, or what experiences shaped you to take you on this journey to where you are now?
So, sort of as you alluded to, I grew up most of my life overseas in various locations. South America, I worked for a while in Japan, had the opportunity to visit my sister in Europe. And so to date, I think I've been on just about every continent except Africa. And so these various places that I grew up and had the privilege to experience just helped me to see that humanity really is at its core very much the same, both in our desires and our needs. The differences of language and culture and food, they all add to the color and kaleidoscope of what makes our world beautiful. But it truly is at its essence that all men and women are much the same. And I think that built in me this understanding of every person is valuable. Every person has a life that is worth living. And so it also gave me a desire to stand up for those who had no voice, who were oppressed, who, it grew in me a desire to see justice and to see people treated right. So I grew up in a very sweet family, and so I had that privilege, but I also saw others who didn't have that privilege, and so it gave me just a heart and compassion to help and serve those in need.
Yes. I think when you when you live outside of your box and your comfort zones and live in different, countries and continents, like you had been able to have those experiences, you see the varied existence of many, many, many different people. And that really impacts you, as it has me myself, and kind of taken us on these journeys to hopefully live out a purpose that is more than just ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but we try to do whatever we can with whatever we have. But yeah, and yes, you had a lovely, sweet family, and it's a blessing to have been able to know you all. So tell us a little bit about Freedom Firm, and what is the core mission of your organization? Has it evolved over time?
True. Yeah. So, like I said, I when I was a child, I had a heart for the oppressed. I had a heart for those who didn't have
Mhm.
a voice. But quite honestly, I knew historically that slavery existed, but I don't think I was really aware of how much slavery exists in the world today. And so it really wasn't until 2008, when I met the man who eventually became my husband, actually. He began to share with me about the issue of trafficking, of
Mhm.
human trafficking. And I think before that, I simply was not aware. I wasn't aware of the slavery that many people found themselves in. And my husband had already worked with Freedom Firm twice before that, and at that point, when I met him, he was applying for a job to go to India to work with Freedom Firm. And what Freedom Firm does is, having been founded in 2006, they work to bring um, rescue, restoration, and justice to minor girls who have been trafficked into sexual exploitation and slavery, and focus specifically on India, because India itself is a huge country,
Mhm.
but it's not only a source, but it's also a transit and destination point in trafficking. It is a large issue in that country, and so my husband had had several experiences being able to see the problem firsthand, being able to fight it, and he was sharing that passion with me, and it tapped something in my heart as well of my this is an oppression, that needs to be stood up against. This is a darkness that should not exist. These are women who have no form of escape, no hope of a different life. And so in 2009, in January 2009, I had the opportunity and the privilege to go for the first time to see Freedom Firm's work in India, and began to come alongside of them as a volunteer at that point, and just began to see how they sought even just one girl who they had heard was in bondage. And you asked kind of how has it changed, has it evolved? And I would say, actually, very much, from the beginning, Freedom Firm's vision and mission was clear. Our goal is to end child sex trafficking in India, full stop. And the way that we have always done that is through rescue, restoration, and justice. But the one thing that possibly I would say has evolved as Freedom Firm has grown is, in the very beginning, our founders saw that prostitution, trafficking was an issue not just in major cities. They had seen it in Mumbai, they had seen it in Kolkata, in Bangalore. But it was not an issue simply in large cities, but actually across the country, both in second and third tier cities, in truck stops, in small villages. Girls were being sold and held in bondage. And so they saw a need to create a mobile response unit that meant whoever it was, social workers, investigators, lawyers, coming together at one spot to try to bring a girl to freedom. And then after a rescue of a girl happened in that one small town or that one small truck stop, they would then disperse and go back to their homes until the next time that they came together. That worked until they came to the city of Pune. And in Pune, actually, though it was not as large, by our American standards, Pune is still a very large city.
Yeah.
But by Indian standards, it was not one of the top tier cities, but it still had the third largest red light area in India. And that meant that again and again, the team could go into the red light area in Pune and find girls who were minor, who were being sold for prostitution. And so they began to see that there's a need not just for a mobile response unit, but rather for a more permanent presence to create an impact on the amount of a problem that was there. And that was actually the point when my husband applied, and they said, "Look, we're just planning to open our first field office in Pune. Would you like to come as a legal coordinator?" And my husband said, "That would be my dream. That would be my purpose of why I've studied law." And so he went, and I guess I followed him there. But yeah, so we spent our first 7 years of our married life in Pune. And all field work for Freedom Firm continued to go out from that field office in Pune. They continued sort of that mobile response DNA from the early years, and would continue to go to surrounding towns, villages, other states. They would follow sort of trafficking lines of where they saw girls were coming from and going back to find out what is the issue, why are they coming from this particular area. And I guess following those paths is what led to each new field office being opened. And so today we now have 6 offices across India, 5 field offices in our main office. But Pune was the first field office. But in terms of our mission, vision, method, that has stayed very much consistent.
Yeah. I first wanted to just point out that you met, got married, and spent the first 7 years of your marriage living in a foreign country, doing these incredible things. But, especially in the first period of marriage, to move and do all that, it's quite a challenge. So I don't know how you did that, but I know your hearts are so intertwined and for the Lord and for working to help and rescue others. So it's
I would just give a little disclaimer. It's what we were led to do, but it's not necessarily something I highly recommend. Right. But it was for us definitely an incubator of it was the right thing for us, and it was very good. It certainly gelled us in our marriage. Perhaps with the fire sometimes, but
I think sometimes when you have those challenges, you are brought even closer together than you ever could be in any other situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the second thing is, speaking to how you were talking about where Freedom Firm, like how it developed and going in mobile units. And I was listening to, because Freedom Firm has their own podcast, Voices for Her, stories of girls who have been trafficked. And you must listen to that. Very, very revealing. And so I was listening to several of them. And some of these little towns or villages, they kind of they set the standard for the children that prostitution is a way to provide for the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these villages, their mentality, their mindset for their families, for their children are, that's an okay way of life. That's how you bring in money for our family. And so they sell the children into prostitution, right?
Yeah.
And so I can see how, you were talking about how it's not just in the major cities, major hubs. It starts in the smaller villages where these children are taken from, right? And some of them are because of those mindsets, which is incredibly devastating that that can be a way of life for a child to have such a traumatic experience and their innocence taken away to help provide for their mom, their dad, and family, right? I just can't imagine the severity of that trauma upon their little lives.
Yeah, it is difficult. And what you're mentioning is in about maybe, especially two of the areas we work, we see that a bit more. It is I would say, a twisted sense of obligation, of um, what you mentioned about a way to honor or care for their family. Um, and so it makes it sometimes difficult working with these girls to say, you are worth so much more. You are capable of so much more. And there have been times where we've met with several of the survivors there, and they said, thank you, because no one else hears our cries. No one else knows the pain that we go through. It's it's just seen as commonplace, and that this is what those people do. And so even police are unwilling to take action. And of course their families are unwilling to listen. And so they had no one else who would hear and take up for them. But even within these groups, we're working for changing of mindsets. We're working even within the villages to begin to try to help them to see that there are other options for their lives, other options for ways to make money beyond selling your children and illegal liquor. There are other ways that can strengthen your family and your home. There was one girl who one of the things we run into with these girls from this background is because their families are complicit in the trafficking. They are very prone to being re-trafficked, even if we rescue them. That's why we always go to the village, to the home, to find out, why was a girl trafficked in the first place? Is it safe for her to return home? And so in every case with these girls, we have to answer no. No, she should be kept in protective custody, because if she's returned home, she'll just be sold a second time. She'll just be sent to another city or a different state. And so she is not safe. But there's often, there are times when these girls are not kept in protective custody, and they are sent, as we expect, somewhere else. And we end up finding them again somewhere else. So there was one girl who we had rescued, I believe, at least twice, perhaps 3 times. And it was her grandmother who was selling her. If you can imagine selling your very own grandchild.
Yeah.
But she was unwilling to speak against her grandmother. She was unwilling to testify against her. She didn't want to maybe disgrace her family. Maybe she was coming under pressure. Maybe she still felt confusion over that. But finally, the last time, she actually began to have a change of heart. And in the end, she did testify against her grandmother. And the main reason behind it is she began to fear for her younger sister. And she began to know, if I don't, my grandmother's going to sell my sister. And she's going to go through the same things that I've gone through. And so different times we've seen where they may not be willing to stand up for themselves, but they know that they don't want this to happen to their sibling. So that was a breakthrough, actually, I think, for her, and she's in a safer place because the one who was selling her and perpetrating this continual exploitation is currently behind bars,
Yeah.
and her younger sister remains safe.
That's really poignant because it shows that we all have that humanity and compassion inside of us, that for that girl to not want to show a sign of rejection for her grandmother, but when she realized that someone else would have to live the life she'd lived and suffer the consequences, she reached out, right? And that's really important to hold on to, that hope that we all have some compassion for others, right?
Yeah.
To not have to suffer and to do something and speak up so that the next generation doesn't, right?
Right.
How do you create the policy changes to prevent trafficking? Because I know that's a lot of what Freedom Firm tries to do is actually change those policies. But how do you work to do that?
Right. Well, in actuality, the law in India is very good. There's not every country can say this. There are countries where there's not the protection enshrined in law, but in India, it is. It is against the law to exploit minor girls. It is, while the act of prostitution itself is not illegal, everything surrounding prostitution, um, from a brothel, from living off the earnings of someone else, so a pimp, everything that has to do with a red light area, all of those items are illegal. And so it actually is not difficult to say the law is being broken. This is not okay because the law is behind you in that. But where Freedom Firm comes in is to try to strengthen systems that are there to protect and without those systems, people are very easily oppressed. And so we come alongside of police, of child welfare committees, of the Department of Women and Child. We interact a lot with various government officials to advocate for these girls. But we believe it's not enough just to say, hey, this is the law, because these are all educated people. These are people, police who know the law. They know it's against the law. It's not enough to say you must implement this because they already know that. You have to come alongside of them and bring the evidence of a crime being done and saying, you are called to uphold the law. The law is this. This law is being broken, and we call you to take action to see that it is not broken. And so we see that through the elements of rescue. So identifying a girl who is being exploited, working with the government systems to bring that girl to safety. Through every process, we're also working to identify where is the hole, where is the breakdown of why is this system not working? Is there corruption in play? Was there a lack of knowledge? Maybe they actually didn't know. Or is it in the case that we've been speaking of, where it's generationally accepted, just identifying where is the breakdown. And so we take one case and working with that one case, this one girl's rescue, working for her restoration, and then working for justice, following that through the system. It's that case itself, it's that girl's life herself that begins to bring the changes needed, that begins to highlight where the thing's broken, and we can begin to work to see integrity brought back into the system so that future girls are rescued. Because we believe that actually justice, our final key of rescue, restoration, justice is actually the foundation on which future girls can be protected.
Yeah.
It's, we can never rescue enough girls out of this. There will always be an impoverished village or a girl at risk or something that can just take the place. It's not enough to rescue her out of it. You have to begin to rebuild the walls that were meant to protect the oppressed. And you do that through justice, through a conviction that sends the message to those who are doing criminal acts: you will be held accountable for this crime, and it's not worth it, so don't do it. And that's how we begin to create the policies that will bring future protection to girls.
Right. When you're holding people accountable and actually showing the consequences of the crime, then hopefully you will limit it in the future. But I know it's a constant battle.
It is.
And, speaking of just, going back to some of the mindset shifts and topics, just because it's so many aspects for these girls, as you said, rescuing them not just from these brothels and situations, but rescuing their minds, right? And I know I deal with a lot of impoverished areas in Sri Lanka for different reasons, just trying to educate in things. And we face this poverty mindset in general. But this is a whole different battle in a way, because you are battling for them to have a lot of emotional restoration, healing.
Yeah.
And, as your, the founders, Mala, had said in one of the podcasts, it's like taking back stolen ground, the innocence that was stolen from their childhoods, allowing them to have these emotional breakthroughs, as you keep, mentioning, that they have to have those breakthroughs of understanding. And so, what kind of also resources and how do you manage that? Through
Well, you're absolutely right that, quite honestly, I say justice is the key, but you cannot achieve justice without the girl who has been traumatized, without her reaching a point of healing to where she can recognize, one, that something wrong was done to her, and two, that she's willing to speak up, that she has the courage to speak up and say, this was what was wrong. This is what was done to me. This is who did it. You won't achieve that conviction without her. And so actually, whereas she's the one who was broken, she's also the one that brings healing and restoration to the system. So she's incredibly powerful. And so we do work for her restoration, so that, because it's only through her voice, really, that future freedom is found. So we do work for our second key of restoration. We work on so many levels, because every girl is different and every girl's journey is different. And so what she needs may be different. And so we seek, first off, to be there for her in the beginning, to build trust, to follow with her, alongside of her, to medical visits, to begin visiting her in a shelter home where she's being kept for her safety, begin offering her the next step that she can take. If that's education, some girls will have some level of education, and we can try to help her begin her education again. Some girls will never have had any level of education. One girl that we worked with, she was so precious because she was still very innocent. She was still very young. And she was actually very excited to be rescued, which is not always the case in the very beginning. But she was excited. And very early on in her conversations with our social worker, she was like, I've never been able to study. I would really like to study. And so, of course, they moved heaven and earth to get her documents, to get her government identity card, which she had not had before. And they were able to enroll her in an accelerated program. They have a thing called open schooling in India. And so that it kind of helps to meet children where they are in whatever age they are, if they're not according to the traditional age group. So she's still continuing to do well. She's continuing to pursue her education, and she says that one day she wants to be a police officer.
Oh, wow.
So, helping each girl along the path. So for some, it's education. It might be helping her into college. For some, it might be that they want a job. They want to begin to gain a skill. And so it might be a beautician's course or a seamstress, or helping her, enter into some various service industries. And so finding opportunities that fit for that girl. But many actually also want to return home. They most of all, I would say, 70, 80% of the girls, really what they desire is to have a family and to have a home and to be a part of their community. And whereas we've talked about several situations where it's generational, the family's not safe, you can't go back there. There are girls from other areas where it was a more traditional tricked and trafficked. It was because they believed they were going for a different job. And this is where they ended up, was in a red light area. And so especially in those cases, many times the girl can be reintegrated to her community. Many times she can get married, and that has been with a number of the girls that we've worked with. They are able to reintegrate, and so that's also a very special thing to watch. And Johanna, I feel like I've probably forgotten your original question, but feel free to redirect me. Anyway.
No, it's great. It's perfect. It's really, it's answering it all. I know. And so, I mean, it's the word bravery just keeps coming to my mind, because I'm thinking to the bravery, because you are dealing with mainly children that have been trafficked, right? So we're talking under 18. Small children. I know one story I listened to was one girl had the bravery to finally speak up because she was worried about a 6-year-old who was being groomed at the brothel where she was rescued from. And the bravery it takes for them to even take those steps to stand before courts, to stand before these judges, these other men, and tell them the story and the trauma that they've been through is so, profound. And then the bravery to take the steps to heal, right? I just, and I was listening to another one where they were talking about how a lot of the girls, as you said, want to get married and have that family. They want to have that sense of belonging, right? Because in these places, they don't belong. They're objects and just impersonal and not even human, right?
Right.
Or treated that way. And so they want that sense of humanity and belonging. So that was also a very important thing to realize when we talk about human trafficking. But that comes along to the question of what are the common misconceptions about human trafficking that some people may have, or that you've come across?
I think whereas media can help to bring awareness of the issue, I think sometimes some movies give a misconception of, that it's a lot of snatch and grab, of kidnapping, of, and that does happen, but that is, I think, a vast minority of the cases. And in the majority of the cases, even in the US or others, the perpetrator is known to the victim. The perpetrator is a trusted person to the victim. There are vulnerabilities that exist that would make someone vulnerable to being trafficked, whether that's poverty, that they're willing to look for a job, they're willing to travel someplace, They're willing to believe someone who says, I have an opportunity for you. So it might just be poverty and lack of knowledge that makes the vulnerability there. But they're going with someone who has promised them something, with someone that they know that they trust. And then that person is not trustworthy, and sells them. Or it could be something where they believe themselves in love with someone. They have a vulnerability of an emotional need. In the U.S., it might be, taking selfies and posting it and creating an online relationship with someone, and then meeting that person, and then going farther along. A trafficker knows how to groom someone in that way, and so a number of the girls that we've also rescued are sold by someone who they believe they were even married to. They believe
wow.
that they ran away with because they believed that their boyfriend loved them, was going to marry them. And so there's an emotional vulnerability there. And then, of course, there are vulnerabilities that are a little bit more unique to India, which is what we've talked about a little bit of, either generational or spiritual vulnerabilities. There are two groups that we work with. One is where generationally villages make their earnings off of selling their own children. And that's the one that we talked about earlier. But then there's another village or area that dedicates certain daughters dedicates them to a goddess. And so in the hundreds of years prior, it would be that girl goes to be a temple dancer, probably also a temple prostitute. But now it's much more just commercial sexual exploitation. But under the protection, per se, of it being a religious practice. And so the media portrayal of a snatch and grab of kidnapping, yes, it does happen. It is not by any means the most common. It is these vulnerabilities that create open problems that children can fall through the cracks in these. And this happens, I believe, in every country. That also gives hope, because as we address those vulnerabilities, as we address trying to make sure people have opportunities to safe job possibilities of, as communities come around people that they know might be emotionally needy, making sure that they have community, we can do a lot even in our own hometowns to make sure that this does not happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to know exactly what's happening so that we can take the steps to avoid those things and make the changes. And I know that on the Freedom Firm's website, and your, I guess, call for this year is, I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. So why that statement, and describe a little or explain a little bit about what it means?
Sure. Well, that was by a man named Edward Everett Hale, who was an abolitionist in the 19th century. And, it's kind of our focus for this year. We're kind of thinking a lot about this concept of the one. We've just recently crossed our 1,000th girl rescued. But it wasn't that we sought to rescue 1,000 girls. It was always one by one by one, finding the one who is in need, seeking that one conviction, one step at a time, one victory at a time. And also, so many times when I speak to people about the issue of trafficking, you can kind of get a little bit of a deer in the headlights look, of, people feel overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
It's such a huge thing. It's more profitable than drugs and weapons trafficking.
Wow.
It is a huge problem, and I don't deny any of that. But what I would say is that it doesn't take much to begin to tip the scales. There is hope. And so I want to always give people that hope as we look at something that appears huge. It's not. It's as we address things one step at a time, one by one by one, whether it's by raising awareness in our area, whether it's by reaching out to children in the foster care system, whether it's by touching these girls one by one in India. It may not seem like a lot, and yet it is tipping the scales. And I'll just give a little bit of, I guess, an example from Pune, because that was what I was most familiar with.
Yeah.
But, when we first went, it was very easy to find a girl and rescue her. They would walk down the streets and you could find a minor girl available for sale. Then they got their first conviction. And very quickly, you could no longer find a girl easily available on the street, but she was still available, but just inside now. You get the second conviction. She's not just available inside. She's only available to special known customers. You get the third conviction. She's not even hardly available to the special known customers. It's becoming less and less profitable. And that was only after 3 or 4 convictions. That's only after hitting it consistently over time. We went to another city. It was actually our second field office was in Nagpur. And this was one place where we had been told, don't bother going. It's impossible. And we'd heard tales of, there are very young girls available there. And so we went to see, and it was true. These, we were used to seeing girls anywhere from like 15 to 17 years old in Pune. But in Nagpur, the girls there standing on the streets openly were anywhere from like 12 to 14 years old. They were very small. They were very young. And there was a big problem there because the system was broken. There was corruption there that allowed this to happen. And so in the beginning, it was very easy to rescue. Obviously, you see them on the streets. You can identify, you can find, you can bring the evidence to the police, you can call them to rescue a girl. And but what we found was that you rescue a girl and she's almost immediately released and she's right back out in the red light area. You rescue her a second time and she's almost immediately released and back out in the red light. So it was a series of time. And it really wasn't until about 5 years into it that we began to reach a tipping point. It got harder and harder and more resistance to our work there. But finally, after about 5 years, it began to reach a tipping point. And whereas we kept identifying the holes, identifying what is the problem, how is this crime continuing to be perpetrated, and as you address those, eventually the situation began to change. And so now today, fast forwarding now 12 years of working in that city, I think it was just last year that even the assistant mayor, basically, of the town stated that this is one of our chief priorities is to end trafficking in our town. The police themselves went in and sealed the red light area. Now, if they identify a minor girl, they will call us to say, hey, I think we have a raid. Will you come and help us? Wow. So the system has changed. Girls are being protected. Now you very rarely find a minor girl in Nagpur where they said it was impossible. Now, does that mean it's gone? Does that mean it has disappeared? No, it's probably just moved further and further out, but that's where we continue to go and we continue to find. But I bring that up just to say there is hope. There is hope. And it doesn't take much. It just takes perseverance. And it takes that step by step. It takes saying, I may not be the greatest. I may not have, all the titles after my name. I may not be able to stop everything, but I am one. And I can stand up and I can do something. And as I do that something, that next right thing, there's hope for change.
Exactly. I mean, it's interesting because that's kind of what I say about, with the work we do with our nonprofit is be that one opportunity. Because we talk more about just one opportunity for a child or a family. It makes such a difference. And you were talking about that change, that one person doing one thing does have a ripple effect of change down the line.
Absolutely.
As you have seen a great success with just one step of faith, one step of work, and towards that removal and dissolution of the prostitution of children in that area. And so it's amazing what one act of forward motion can do, right?
Right.
And yeah, as you're correct, because sometimes we think that it's overwhelming when we think of poverty, when we think of human trafficking, when we think of all these things in the world that are going on, and we're like, how can we do anything? How can we solve the problem? But it's just about each one of us just doing whatever that one thing can be. Just trying our best in whatever way we can, right? Yeah, because it's not one single person is going to solve everything. It's all of us working together, doing at least something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're much more powerful that way.
Yeah. So, like, I know we kind of discussed this a little bit maybe, but what does the process of rescuing individuals from the trafficking look like?
Right. Well, we have investigators who go in who just look like any other regular customer, and they go in to red light areas. And actually, post-COVID, it's gotten a little bit more complicated sometimes. Red light areas have moved further out into more residential areas or private hotels. But our investigators are incredible sometimes. Like, they remember a girl's face. They might have seen her in one town and they will find her in another town, even if she's
Wow.
So they're amazing guys, but they're just ordinary guys. And they go and they will surveil an area, identify someone who they believe is minor. They always wear they wear a surveillance camera of some sort, both for their own protection and integrity, but also to bring back evidence to the team to view of a particular girl and see, do we see signs? Do we believe that she is minor, forced, and so once that is established, what will usually happen is that the investigator engages with the girl, sits with her so that she cannot run, is there as a customer, as a regular person, and our team will have brought that information to the police, the evidence of the crime, and calling on them to take action and bring rescue to this girl, because we don't have authority to remove anyone from any situation. It's the police who have that authority. And so that can sometimes be half the battle of getting the police to take action or to value and place this need above all the many other needs competing for their attention.
Right.
But then eventually we will find someone who is willing and able. And so we will then go with that police team, perform a raid to arrest the perpetrators of that, whether that's the brothel keeper, the pimp, if the trafficker is there, perhaps the brothel owner, and bring the girl to a place of safety. In the police station, then the police will record the crime that has been the allegation of that crime, and the girl is then brought to a shelter, usually first to a government shelter home. And our social workers are there with her from the brothel, from that point of rescue, helping her to understand what's going on, helping her to know she's safe, helping her to feel secure, that she's not being arrested, that she's not being brought to a worse place, because many times a girl will have been brainwashed and lied to by the brothel keeper and saying, oh, if they catch you, they're going to put you in jail for 10 years, or, they will make the girl afraid. And so the social workers are there with her. And they walk with her from there to, if she has medical appointments, they're with her, and then also to the shelter home. And many times this takes hours upon hours of a process, and they're, ending up at a government shelter home at 3 in the morning or something
Yeah.
like that. And so our social workers are incredibly committed to put themselves, through all of that, and just making sure that they're with the girl step at a time. So that's really
Yeah.
what that rescue process looks like, to bring the girl from a brothel to a place of safety.
Yeah. It's a very difficult and heavy profession. If I can call it a profession, but it's also a mission.
Mhm.
Um, and just to kind of also ask, like, how do you and the team, the social workers, the lawyers, everyone around in the whole entire team, how do they like recover from
Mhm.
the heaviness of this work?
Yeah. Um, well, I'll share just a little from a personal aspect. For me, I think the very first year I spent in India was one of the probably the darkest of my life. I'm a relatively optimistic person and can find the flower growing up through the crack in the sidewalk and think, oh, how nice. But
Yeah.
I lost that in my first year of India. Just so much darkness, so much corruption, finding, where you ought to find help, you find those fighting against you. All of that was just very difficult and discouraging the first year. But for me, I began to see, after about a year, I began to see hope, like glimmers of change, that, oh, this police officer does care. He is doing the right thing. Oh, this girl, her heart has begun to soften and she is beginning to change, and we're seeing her take positive steps. Or, oh, this judge did do the right thing and passed a conviction or denied the bail. And you began to see that, yes, it's a battle. Yes, there's a lot of darkness, but there's also hope. And I think sometimes that longevity in the work begins to give you that perspective of, okay, we continue to press forward. And it is a difficult work, and it is a heavy work. And sometimes, I think for the first several years, we felt like it was about a 2 to 3 years, that a social worker or investigator might last. They lasted longer. They're really doing well. Um, but it has gotten longer. And part of that is we also try to provide our staff with times of retreat, with times of counseling for them, a little understanding that secondhand trauma is a real thing, um, but also for those who have been in it long enough to see, okay, there is hope. Perhaps like doctors begin to get a little bit desensitized to the sight of blood, or can handle the very difficult things that they face that I would probably be in pieces over. In some ways, you begin to understand, okay,
Right.
we see these stories a lot. There is hope. We will walk with her. We are not discouraged when we see corruption, because we know that we can press through and we can find a way forward. Um, so there comes a bit of a customization with it, I guess. But every so often that story will come. There was one this last year that was hard, for me. I think I mourned over it. I struggled over it for about a day, because again, it was it was two of the youngest girls that we've rescued to date, and they were ages 10 and 12, which are my girls' age. um, and just understanding from the picture how young they were, of understanding my children. It just, every so often you do get that story that pierces you to the heart again, and that was one that was hard. But that story for me was again one that those girls, again, it relights that fire of, this must stop. This is an evil that must stop. It is not okay. It is not all right. These girls should not, they should be children. They should be able to be children. They should not have their innocence stolen. And we have to fight to see this stopped. And so, yes, it breaks your heart again, but you can also let it take and re-strengthen that resolve.
Yeah. Yeah. To continue in the fight, to help others. Yeah. I mean, going along the lines of recovery, what have you seen has been like immediate or long-term care that survivors need and receive after being rescued?
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the path of each girl is a bit different. It depends on her background. Sometimes it depends on why was she trafficked? Can she be reintegrated with her family? Does she have any education? Can she go forward? So there's the immediate answering of what she needs, shelter, care, food, and then sort of that next step of, okay, what can she do? Many girls, though, that we work with are not able to return immediately to their homes. They will have a period of time in the shelter home. Many may have already been in a red light area for a while and have kind of been shortchanged on some of those life skills that we learn at home.
Right.
And so, sort of in response to that, our team began to develop something that we call life skills sessions. And they will provide these in the shelter homes. And it just goes through everything from, your emotions of, anger management, conflict resolution, to what is hygiene, what's personal feminine hygiene, to rights of, these are the laws in India. You have rights even as a child. And so just covering a lot of different aspects. And then generally also there's fun in it. And so we do those life skill sessions in each of the shelter homes where we work. And then we'll also do various one-on-one counseling sessions with the girls, building that rapport, building trust. If the girl's ready to open up and talk, being there for that. And helping her to move forward, really. But then there's also group therapy sessions that we'll do. We've brought in dance therapy, art therapy, gardening, various fun things with that. Around holidays, getting together, bringing biryani and gifts, and just spending time with the kids. But helping them to have an initial recovery, to, if they're ready for deeper healing and conversations, being there for that, trying to help them to look forward and be ready for a new future, a different future. Because sometimes we've said that a girl who's been trafficked, if you don't do anything with her, actually, when she is released from a shelter home, she's more vulnerable than she was in the first place, because she knows what she could go back to, but she doesn't know what she can go forward to. And so helping them to have that answer of, okay, you have a purpose, you are valuable, you have, you are far more than a commodity, and helping them to begin to have vision and hope and a dream for their own lives. And then trying to help them to connect with an opportunity for that dream. So every girl's path is going to be different, but we follow along with her for many, many years to come. We never say goodbye. If a girl no longer needs us, there's times when she's like, I'm happy, I'm home, I have a family now, I don't need it. And so that's great. She's got our phone number. If she needs us, we are there for her. And then there's other girls who we walk alongside for much longer.
Yeah. I think I was listening to how one of your team members were saying that they dream for them because you're so invested in their life and the hope for their life that you dream for them. And it, as you said, it breaks your heart when those dreams get shattered. If, they're unable to embrace those opportunities or change or, get re-trafficked. But that's so special to like be so invested that you're dreaming for them, just like a parent dreams for their children, right? Just the care and compassion to have that for them. Yeah, but that's the hard part, is having, seeing that how they can embrace those opportunities and uh, feel that there is hope for the future, and getting them to that point, right?
Right. I think if you've read a few of the stories, and we try to be very forthright, in telling of the various blogs you might read on Freedom Firm's homepage. Many of these stories you can't tie up in a neat bow because their lives at work. And we look at each one as like this journey. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs. But we're hoping that she's going in the right trajectory. And so one of the girls we were working with more in the recent past was a girl who's known by the name Hema. And she was one where she'd been trafficked by someone she believed she loved. He'd posed as a boyfriend, she'd gone with him, but she still loved him. She still had this emotional attachment to him. And though she knew what he did, that he sold her, that, he wasn't good, she kept trying to get him out on bail. She kept trying, she couldn't let go. And so our social workers kept working with her and kind of counseling her and different things. And at some point, she did begin to understand. I think she actually began to receive some threats and understood, okay, these are not actually great people. But we were able to work both for her protection, but not giving up on her, though she wasn't thinking clearly at first, though she didn't understand, but helping her to begin to walk towards seeing herself in a different place in life. And so I think this last time we met her, it was a good meeting, and she has hopes to do other things in her life. But again, it was a journey. It was a journey of over a year of meeting her and talking to her and saying, no, this is not good.
Wow. Yeah. It took over a year. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, sometimes we all have those ways we have to change our mindsets. Changing mindsets is so difficult sometimes, but it is a process. But I'm really grateful that your team is out there, working the work that you are doing, the hard work, and, giving these children an opportunity to live a better life, or have that opportunity to live a better life should they choose it. And just, since a lot of healthcare professionals listen to this podcast, what are some ways that, you have seen it, like even in India, working with health professionals, how can we be more aware in identifying and supporting victims? And I know that when I had to renew my license this last time, I had to do a CME little thing on human trafficking and identification. So it is something that they are trying to have health professionals be more aware of. But in your experience, what are things that we can look for or use in our scope of practice?
Well, I think, I think we're all aware, human trafficking is a global problem. I think there's probably no city and no country untouched by it. So there's certainly a large issue in our own country as well. And but the good thing is that there are folks in this country working for it. And one of them I would direct healthcare professionals here in the U.S. to is one that's called Polaris, Polaris Project. And they run the U.S. National Human Trafficking Hotline. That number, I'll just go ahead and share that here, but it's 1-888-373-7888. And that's where you can give a tip on suspected trafficking. And they also give various things to look out for. They share that probably, every human trafficking victim probably came into contact with a healthcare professional at some point. And so if someone is a healthcare professional, they really are on a front line of being able to potentially identify a trafficking victim. And, whether that's someone who you, has various, sexual reproductive health concerns, signs of sexual violence, or reporting an unusually high number of partners, that's a pretty easy sign to be concerned about. Others might be if someone's unwilling or unable to or hesitant to answer questions about an injury or an illness. That's of course another sign just to be concerned of. And or if someone is with maybe they're not letting a victim out of their sight,
A
and so you
controlling
have someone who's
companion.
present with them, answering the questions for them, not letting them speak, or perhaps even providing all the translation for them. Those are probably some top warning signs. And if that is the case, then it would be wise to reach out to seek assistance, to perhaps try to have some more conversation with that potential victim.
Yeah, and I know there is a pair tool, and Heal Trafficking is another website full of information for healthcare providers as well. Looking for those warning signs that could indicate, and those pair tools and assessments that can be used for healthcare providers to kind of like go through in their mind when they're talking to each patient, and it, providing the privacy to get that non-judgmental perspective and conversation. And out of compassion really allows us to have a little bit more willingness from the patient to share exactly what's going on. And we shouldn't be afraid to ask too, is what they also say, is because if it's a non-trafficked person, they won't be offended. But if it is someone who is being trafficked, they will be ever thankful that you are asking questions that can hopefully rescue them out of their situations. And of course, always respecting and responding in appropriate manners. And of course, we'll provide hotlines, as Leah had mentioned, from Polaris and other resources that you can use and keep on your radar for future use. And then lastly, how can communities or individuals help support your justice efforts through the Freedom Firm?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the first, like me, I think there are many who are still not aware that slavery does still exist, that trafficking is an issue. I think there has been a lot of awareness efforts surrounding that, and so I think more are aware. But you can do a lot to raise awareness even in your own community. I always say that battle starts here at home. I do encourage you to look after your community. Be aware of those around you. Engage with those who you think could be marginalized on the edges of community, or without healthy emotional supports. You can do so much in your community, but just because we engage in our own community doesn't mean that we aren't able to also engage across the seas. So that's why I live in the US now, but I'm so thankful that I get to continue to be a part of this work in India. And so I do that through praying for them. I do that through supporting them, and just helping others to know, hey, there is hope. There is something that we can do. And as we stand together as a team, we are one body working for this. And our team in India, I can't impact any girls without them and the incredible work that they do. But I know that they also cannot continue their work without me. They need us. They need us to stand alongside of them. And so I encourage you, I invite you, whether it's to learn more yourself about trafficking and the issues today and what you can do, or whether it is by spreading the awareness. We have an ambassador program that we do every year. We're actually in the midst of it now, that we give you tools to be able to help to share that within your community. Or if you want to financially support and help to uphold the work and the incredible team that's in India doing this day after day, we invite you to learn more about it and join us.
And you also have the Ruhama Designs, where people can support the work through the jewelry and items that are actually crafted and made by those who are survivors, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah, on our website, freedomfirm.org, we do have a shop page, and each item that we sell has been handcrafted by a woman who is who was a victim, who is now a survivor, and this gave her a sustainable, a healthy livelihood, a hope of a next step. It was formed as a transitional business to help women begin to take that step from sort of the welfare position of being inside of a shelter home into being back into community and having that way to support themselves. And so every item is handcrafted by a survivor, and the profits of that, any of those sales of these meaningful gifts, any of that goes on to continue the work of rescue, restoration, and justice. And so it just continues the cycle of being able to help current and future women.
Yeah, and they are beautiful. And so beautifully made. Mm-hmm. And so thank you so much, Leah. I really appreciate your time and the work that you guys are doing. I'm glad that, there are people who are being that one. We all just are going to be taking that step to be that one, just like you guys are. And so thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your story, sharing the work that Freedom Firm is doing to hopefully abolish slavery in this form. And hopefully we can see slavery of all forms abolished in this world soon.
That's right. We keep pressing forward.
Yes.
With hope, knowing that we can create impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you all so much for listening. And I appreciate your time to listen to these podcasts. I hope that you are able to spark hope and know that you can too be that one to make a difference. And no matter how daunting the task seems, when we take that one step, we can see change. Thank you so much. Appreciate and have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Medicine, Motherhood, Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine, Motherhood, Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for the informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical questions or concerns. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast host.